Okay, good morning. My name is Damien Owens and I work on the new product development team with Alan Hoare, Alan Redmond, Pat Talbot and Fidmer McCarthy, and indeed the many of our members and non-members alike who have taken part in many of our initiatives over the last year in terms of taking surveys, workshops to explore this product development process. For the next few minutes, about 10 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a quick update on the work that was undertaken in the product development initiative, and I suppose seek views, or at least try and stimulate the thought processes so we can get some ideas back on where we've got to date. Our process started, the story so far, our process started around April, May of this year. We had a workshop in this very room with many of you and with other members, and we had I suppose a brainstorm and idea generation workshop which generated about 93 ideas which we grouped into categories. Following that in June we had developed about 4 different categories and developed some storyboards around what products or what the offers could like in these areas, and we then went back out to the members, had a number of surveys, sat face to face to members with the storyboards and gathered their views. We've distilled that information, and where we're at today is we fundamentally have 2 ideas, 2 concepts that we're doing a business analysis on, and of course the idea is then to reduce that to a single idea and deliver a service to members. I suppose it's important at this point just to remember who the end user is, who's the customer. We're looking at the small, medium-sized builder and construction professional out there. Probably only employs 3 to 5 people, so they're, rather than being a hub, they're a spoke in a lot of other people's projects. They'll have some projects on the go themselves, but will receive drawings from architects if they're doing, say, part of a school or something like that. So really our idea here is to introduce a service that will increase the effectiveness and competitiveness of these companies almost at a personal level, so it's increasing efficiency that way. So we've come down towards 2 concepts. First concept is a seated web portal. So there are a number of industry portals out there for the construction industry, and many are limited. Many provide information, say if you're looking for architects, builders, timber, bricks, whatever. However, very few of them touch, if any, touch on IT services to assist the construction community. So our concept here is provide and position a seated website as an industry portal, provide links to a lot of relevant services that will help with day-to-day information, say with planning information, tendering information, dedicated IT services, dedicated packages that are useful specifically to construction industry, as well as third-party services. Now, some services will be free to non-members and some may be subscription-based, and they could include things like document storage, project management tools. So the objective here is to increase the personal effectiveness of the effectiveness of these small companies, and then increase the relevance and reach of CETA to attract new members. So if we look at some portals that will be out there, for example, a big one in the UK is called the Construction Centre, and as you can see, it's basically just a page of links where somebody can look for products, companies, wholesalers, whatever. On the top toolbar there on the right hand side is one, for example, called CAD drawings, which is a very useful one. If you click on that link, you can then get CAD drawings for showers, for light fittings, whatever particular piece you need for the piece of work you're involved in. You get detailed CAD drawings there. So this is just the first concept, is to provide a web portal page like that, but very specific to the Irish construction sector, providing more or less IT-based services in there. So we'll park that one for a moment and look at the second concept. Our second concept is to put in place a suite of workflow management tools and collaboration tools, again to increase the effectiveness of this community. Now, a number of services are already existing in this space. You've got Wubius, Basecamp, Huddle. So they all provide basically project management products located in the cloud and allow companies to manage their projects. They're pretty much standards agnostic. So I can share documents, it doesn't really matter what the document is, I can share the document, create milestones. From a small business perspective, allows me to keep track of my projects and know who's doing what. Another aspect of this will be, given the target market of this, again, the small construction company, a lot of this functionality will have to be mobile accessible. So we're talking about somebody out in the field accessing this with a smartphone or a laptop using Wi-Fi, perhaps using an iPhone application or applet to pull down these services. And this is a screen grab from Rubius. So you can see it has a dashboard which allows you to manage the various issues going on in your project. Could be looking at drawings, the history, who's got to do what, and where your correspondence is. So again, these are standards, document standards agnostic, but really increase the effectiveness of how you manage your projects. So really, is the questions that I'd like the response I'd like to get now to feed into some of our business analysis phase, we're looking at these two projects, these two concepts. So, you know, as practitioners in the industry, and particularly focusing on the smaller end of the market, which of this functionality would you see as most useful to help you do your day-to-day business? What gaps do you see there? Are there any particular services you would like to see in a web portal?
So I think a big problem at the moment in the industry is workflow management and collaboration.
Yeah.
How comes no value work to manage, workflow to manage? That's a huge issue. So it's anything that can help companies win business or win work.
So we're looking at the tendering and bidding phase at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, is it something that helps them to tender or bid more effectively? I mean, is it more about portal, which gives them IT services that?
Okay.
It's a positive way to, a lot of companies in that kind of space, in the 3 to 5 man space, are not in a position to tender for certain jobs. If you could have a facility where you can cluster, so that an M&E, small M&E firm and a small architecture firm and a small civil firm can actually work together as a cluster and then go for tender. So some way they can meet up, or the skill sets complement each other, so they can actually go for a medium-sized job, which they wouldn't be able to go for themselves. So something in that space might help.
Okay, so it's almost a business social networking in it. A bit more involved than that.
A bit more involved than that, but let them maybe work together on their proposals and let them find each other, or if they're looking for, if you have a job up in Donegal, you can find someone up there that might have local knowledge or something like that, but you have the skills for EIN skills and you're sitting in Dublin, but you have local knowledge, so you can meet people as well as decide to do business with them and then go proposals. So basically,
the fundamental object of this is to build something for the network that is EIN. Let's not forget that's the purpose of, that's why we're funded to do this. So it's important that we get the views of the members. So if there's any contractors here, architects, engineers, we'd like to hear what, maybe about your pain, but also about what gain you might get out of a piece of technology that we could develop on your behalf. Any contractors here?
Just in terms of the workflow and collaboration, anything that can tie in the new government forms contract and the notices that are required under those.
In the United Kingdom, the JCT Contracts Tribunal, these are people who produce the JCT contracts, collaborated with the RIBA, and they produced a tool, an online tool that was basically like an online contract. But all the workflows of the JCT 19, I think it was 2005 contract, are now kind of enabled electronically, so you can notify the contractor, the client about delays, disruptions, things like that. So that's another example.
It's vital with the public works forms contracts. There's mandatory notice periods, and if you miss issuing a notice at a certain point in time, whatever entitlement, slim entitlement you might have had is gone. So in terms of the workflow management and collaboration, you know, that's a feature that a lot of small to medium enterprises will be.
So a tool that would generate notifications or at least,
that handles the workflow of it, that
yeah.
you know that I've signed the contract in this date, and if I issue an RFI and I get no response, I have to issue a notice under a certain clause, and it's to keep track of that.
This is maintain compliance.
Yeah, and to not bar you from any entitlements you might have under the contract itself. There's a whole bunch of different workflows and notices there that you have to issue, and you have to stick to deadlines in terms of timetables and days and that sort of stuff.
Thank you. They're interesting views, and just anybody online who has views, you know, email them in. Our names are on the CETA website.
Oh, you might be putting Colin on the spot there for JBT. Sorry about that. Just, I mean, as a contractor, can you see any,
As a consultant,
or as a consultant, yeah, can you see any thing that we could do?
In terms of the, I can see exactly the point. Sorry, I don't know the name of the person. In terms of the government contract and the management, because there's the huge emphasis on time and on deadlines, and I think similarly from a PPP from the PPP model and the level of administration associated with PPP projects, and that's what's out there at the moment is PPP. So in terms of from a delivery side and from a technical advisor side, which we have some experience in, that we see that there's huge similar owners in terms of timescale and deadlines, but on both sides of the fence. So if there was a tool there, and perhaps it might be a slight manipulation of the previous tool to be able to manage that process, and it's a huge process in terms of the PPP schemes. That's one item I'd be interested in.